Good morning and welcome to Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. My name is Samantha Thompson and I'm the chairperson. The meeting will be webcast live and archived for 12 months and it can be viewed by the following link on your minutes. Firstly, I'd like to start with apologies, please, Mandy.
I've received apologies from Councillors Worthington and Cabinet members Councillor Parry and Pert.
Thank you. Do we have any other apologies? No? Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. Would anybody like to... Has everybody read the minutes held on the 30th of July 2024? Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Okay, so we'll go on to agenda item 4, which I believe Alan and Emily are presenting. Over to you, Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bizarrely, today you were supposed to be having Councillor Parry present this because it's in his portfolio, and also later on you're supposed to be having Councillor Pert present the adult social care complaints, but he's on holiday. So both of them have delegated upwards, and so here I am, hopefully trying to do my level best to make a decent fist of the presentation of those 2 additional reports. This morning, Mrs. Dorbar's here, Emily, to undertake a presentation which will take you through the customer experience strategy. This is our opportunity to just give you, for you to consider the customer experience strategy update and make note of the progress and also ask questions. It's really important as councillors representing the people across Staffordshire that you understand on their behalf precisely what we're trying to achieve with this. And if there's anything in this that you think the people you represent wouldn't understand and benefit from, then please do shout up. And that's the reason why we're asking you to provide comments and feedback. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Mrs. Dorbar to undertake the presentation. I think there's around 20 slides. So if we go through the presentation first, save any questions up until the end, and then we'll do our best to answer those questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. I'm hoping that in the following slides I'll be able to explain the purpose for the strategy, provide a bit of an update on the work that we've been doing since we were last here in April, as well as sharing with you some of those developing ideas, specifically our overall vision and the pillars within that are contained within. And importantly, I'll be highlighting our intended customer promise. The reason for the strategy, we don't intend to replicate a commercial landscape. We are local authority, we do understand that, but there is a lot that we can learn from our both our local authority and retail partners around how our residents feel, what our residents expect from us as an organisation, and how we can meet their needs. It really is about making it easier for residents to do business with us and to help drive change in the way that we do things, so that we meet those needs in a more efficient way. We really do want to use this strategy to discover and remove those points of pain, to identify the opportunities that are available to us, and to make sure that we really do solve real customer problems. And in doing so, our intention is to create more efficient processes that help reduce the financial burden on us, to make it easier for the customer to do business with us, and to make sure that the people that they speak to at this organisation go through some form of consistent training so that the customer feels listened to. Just to give you an overview of the work that's happened so far, we've used our relationship with the Institute for Customer Services that I talked about last time in April to really understand the landscape of public services. And one trend is very clear, that satisfaction with residents is declining in public services as a whole. That includes local authority and other organisations that we're similar to. For Staffordshire in particular, we undertook a public survey and also an internal survey to really understand what do our residents think about the way that we do things. And 3 things were very clear. Our residents really wanted us to handle and respond to their problems much better. They wanted our communications and their interactions online to be improved, and the quality of our emails, auto responses and written response in particular needed improvement. I know Kate is on the agenda after me and she'll explore some of those problems a bit more, but hopefully I'll touch on those too. And from an employee perspective, the people that are responsible for providing that experience, our employees were really critical and said that we could be better, we could share our customer experience performance with others more, that we need to be better at recognising the people who deliver well and deliver an improved customer experience. And we could involve our residents and customers in the development of our new products and services more. Something I'm hoping everybody will agree with. And these things are important because when I spoke to you in April, we talked about our aspirations and in our delivery plan to achieve a service mark accreditation in 2025. So really understanding where we are today helps us to do that. We've been using a customer experience model to really understand where we are today and where we want to be. And as an organisation, what we really want is for the customer to truly be at the heart of what we do and helping drive our improvement activities. We talked about this last time and the work's continued around our terminology. We use many different things to describe our customer. As you know, Staffordshire serves a really diverse population, I think just over 880,000 individuals. And we call them many different things. And for ease in this strategy, we're going to refer to our residents, our claimants, our children, our guardians, all those people as customer. But we have also used data from Experian and from our census to understand the profiles of our residents so that our organisation can better understand those needs of the main customer groups that sit within Staffordshire. So far, we've undertaken quite a considerable amount of organisational research. We've also looked outwardly, we've looked externally at good benchmarks, both in local authority sectors, public services and external. We've discussed the results and some of our emerging ideas at the Senior Leadership Conference in July, and the Innovation Task Force has really scrutinised the data and came up with some recommendations and ideas. And we've already started to create the support models like the customer experience maturity model, other tools and training to really support the strategy in the whole. It's a 3-year plan that I'm presenting to you where we'll spend 2025 and 2026 really tackling those problems that have come out of our research and resurveying in 2025 with the hope that in 2027 we'll achieve our desired state, but that will also be a point where we can stop, take stock, reassess and see if the strategy still fits or what needs to change or if our customers have changed. So I'm excited to introduce to you our vision overall. So our vision is for our customer is that they're at the heart of what we do, how we act and what we plan, and that we'll create services that anyone can use and will show our commitment to customer excellence. And it's been designed around these 3 key pillars. They represent our strategy and our leadership, our culture and how engaged our people are, and our actual operational delivery. And it's the aim that these 3 pillars will encompass all things that make up the customer experience. Our leadership is centred around 2 key aims. It's around our commitment and our credibility. Our leadership aims aim to make sure that customer experience is at the centre of our decision making, that it's as important to us as other key indicators, and that we are constantly doing the right thing for our residents, our employees, our stakeholders, and our wider community. Our people is centred around 2 key aims, around measuring our capability, that we have the skills and that we recruit the right people in the right roles to deliver these aims, and our continuity, that we make sure we recognise the right things and the right behaviours so that our workforce continue to deliver on our customer experience promise. And finally, our delivery pillar will centre around our creativity and our consistency. Our creativity aim is to make sure that we are continuously improving and that we do use innovation to improve the customer experience. And I'll talk to you shortly about how we align with the digital strategy and other strategies that will be concerned with our creativity. But also our consistency. So we want to ensure that our processes and our systems really are designed from the resident's perspective, and that we deliver a consistent standard across any access channel, regardless of the way somebody may choose to do business with us. We want their experience to be the same. We've undertaken an exercise to really look across the organisation to understand what boards and strategies already exist, and we are not proposing that customer experience will become a new board. Instead, we're proposing that we will become an important aim within the already existing boards, and I've named the 4 biggest ones in the slide on screen. We really do see a lot of alignment between what we're trying to do, and we see that our work and the work of these existing strategies can work together and complement each other really well. But honestly, the work that we do is very different. Our customers are different. The people we serve, what we're trying to achieve is very diverse. So trying to agree and set a level of standards or a standard of service that fits all wouldn't be right. Instead, what we've done is we've created a customer promise that instead is a range of promises that our people can commit to ensure a golden thread of consistency across the way we do things, and helps the customer to understand what they may expect from Staffordshire when they do business with us. I've also provided a plan on a page. This should hopefully highlight the journey that the strategy should go on. It shares with you our vision, how those pillars sit beneath that, what we will deliver, how we will be guided, and what our expected outcome is, how we will become leaders in the customer experience. But importantly, I think customer experience can very quickly and very easily become something that is unmanageable or unquantifiable. And we really wanted to take the time to make sure that embedded within this was a very clear objective of what we would achieve and by when, and how we would measure that and know if we were able to achieve it. So I've provided that to you today under those 3 pillars, what it is specifically we'll look to measure, how that will progress over the strategy term. We've come to these specific measures by looking at both our industry standard benchmarks with local authorities and in the private sector to pick the right measures that make sense for Staffordshire. And finally, I've shared with you on screen today our next steps with this strategy following your feedback.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Emily. That was good. Thank you. Very positive. Are you happy to take questions? Yep, lovely. Do we have any questions? Councillor Francis.
Yeah, just a quick one. In all the years I've been in management and senior management in various companies, I was always taught that the customer, every one of us is a customer. Now, every councillor in this council is a customer of the council and vice versa. So you've got to analyse what the councillors think and how their interaction with our constituents is. So I assume you've done all that, and you've got a strategy that includes all the councillors and their customers, which are their constituents, because I get a lot of feedback, obviously, on this sort of stuff, where they can't get through when we deleted the phone systems, if you like, so our customers could ring in with a complaint or have a chat or something like that. Particularly when it went online, and a lot of people around these tables know what I'm on about because I've been on about it for years, that if they have a particular issue, they can't get through and certain things don't happen and they can't get through to the right people. You know, via email is great, but if you're not on the internet and you can't use email and you can't figure out how to use it, which a lot of elderly people can't, there's a problem there, and there's a bump in the road that you've got to sort out. What are you doing about it?
Whatever's easiest, Emily. What would you prefer?
Well, let's deal with Councillor Francis. I did enjoy the thing about you've been going on about it for years. You've been going on for years. It's always a pleasure, Councillor Francis. I know. So part of the reason why this is here is to make sure that the experience that councillors have is fed back into this process. This is the first stage in this engagement process, as you've seen on this sign-off chart. You'll find that many of the experiences that residents have via you are the ones we've been referring to in this strategy. So, for example, how they're responded to by telephone, how they're responded to by email and in writing. It is clear, isn't it, that we can do better, particularly in our written communications. When we send out written communications to do with highways, they do tend to be long, and actually if somebody's asking a succinct question, people probably want a succinct answer rather than a long-winded answer about the strategy and everything that's associated with it. It is a challenge to define who we are dealing with, and Mrs. Dawbar dealt with that in one of her one of her slides. Some people have no choice but to interact with the council. This isn't like choosing Amazon. It's not like choosing to go to a particular restaurant where you're a customer and you are paying for a service. There are occasions where you get no choice but to be interacting with the council, and we're going to call those people customers for the sake of this conversation. What we do want to do as part of that interaction is, even if they have no choice but to be with the council, to make sure that that experience is as good as it can be. It is worth bearing in mind that some people, when they interact with the council as a, in inverted commas, customer, are dealing with some very, very difficult issues. They might have a problem with their child, an elderly relative, somebody might have just died, and that the first contact that they ever have with a local authority in their entire life might be to go to the registry office and to register the death. So we want every experience that people have to be empathetic, thoughtful, but professional, and as courteous and as quick as we can possibly make it in order to get everything done. Again, when we're dealing with customers in the commercial world, you'd want a quick customer interaction that's satisfactory and serves everything that you desire. Some interactions in the public sector take time because the cases are very, very complicated. And so whilst we might want to do things slightly more quickly, sometimes we have to do things slightly more slowly. And you as councillors, and this is back to the point that you've made, Councillor Francis, you as councillors have to deal with the consequences of that as the residents get in touch with you and say, why hasn't this been done? So it's important that we as councillors understand that some things can be done quickly and some things have to take a bit of time because the process requires that. To the other points you made, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Dorbar to give some more detailed responses.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. I think I'd make the important point that prior to this strategy, we really did not have a consistent way of talking to and gathering the views objectively of the customer or resident's experience, good, bad or indifferent. So what this will aim to do is gather that more consistently. And I think prior to this, customer experience has probably felt like a customer service problem, and it's a whole organisation responsibility. So some of the things that you referred to, or decisions that are made, or changes to our services, the aim of the strategy will be to hold those services accountable and to ask them to think about those impacts before those decisions are made. So I would hope that it would aim to tackle that proactively in the future too.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Councillor Francis stole my thunder a bit there. I don't know if he's reading my notes, but my question was going to be quite simply, do you see going digital an advantage or a disadvantage, or what are they, advantages or disadvantages?
Sorry, Councillor Davies, could you just repeat that for me?
Well, with respect, I don't think I need an answer because I think you've dealt with it. But the digital one, going digital, you know, what do you see as advantages and disadvantages?
So the advantages are the ability to get the issue into the right department quite quickly. The disadvantages are that we need to make sure that the website and the forms that we have associated with it are easy to use and intuitive to use. If I'm going to Staffordshire County Council website, I find it easier to go via Google than I do to go via the Staffordshire County Council landing page. Type into Google, fix a pothole in my area, return, and number one on the page is Staffordshire County Council's pothole repair page. Try and go in through the landing page for the website, and it is a thing of mystery, really. So we need to make that more intuitive and more straightforward to use, but people do use Google. I think the other aspect as far as digital is concerned with some people who perhaps find it difficult is that sometimes you do need somebody alongside you who's literate, IT literate, to be able to help you get through that thing. And some people don't have as useful access to the internet as you might like, and therefore for them it's going to be difficult. For that reason, we continue to invest in the customer services team. I don't know how many we've got in the customer services team, but it's quite a lot, isn't it?
Just short of 50.
Just 50. Okay, so we still have a lot of people able to answer the telephone. I don't know if it's my advancing years, but I do, I'm now in the crazy position of my 13-year-old son will occasionally, when I'm trying to do something on my smartphone, taking the phone away from me and saying, "Let me help, Dad." I'm like, all right, if you feel that way. So I do think that all of us find that whilst the designers of these websites might think that they're intuitive, I think they might be intuitive to an age group and not intuitive to perhaps older people, as I am starting to become. The other thing that I think is a potential downside on the digital front is that you do find that the IT companies are constantly changing the format that you're dealing with. Does my nut to switch on Outlook, my email system, to find out once again the 24-year-old analyst programmer at Microsoft has decided the layout's not quite right and we're going to move things around yet again. And I find that frustrating. So I think, as Mrs. Dorbar referred in her presentation, we do need to make sure that that consistency is there so that when people do get into it, they can use it well and use it for a protracted period of time. But as far as the disadvantages are concerned, there are some. It's undoubtedly the case, but we do have a backup of the customer services team. Got there in the end, in order to help out. Hopefully that helps. Probably doesn't, but I gave it the old college try.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think there's going to be a consistency of comments coming from the councillors in some respects. I think all customer-facing, remote, for want of a better word, organisations have got exactly the same problems or issues, or in some respects, it's finding the best solution and pinching it from somewhere else. There's many a time I go somewhere, listen for something, think, oh, I can take 10% of what I've seen there and apply that in whatever I'm doing, or even 100% in some cases. So I think what's interesting and what's important is benchmarking. And I notice on page 24 you've got two external research comments, Institute for Customer Services and the UK CSI, which I presume is the UK Institute for Customer Services. It's not the crime scene investigators and whatever. Sometimes I think coming onto our website, it is like investigating a crime, to be honest, trying to find the evidence and the solution. Do they broaden out to sort of similar but non-governmental organisations like the utility companies and people like that? Because they obviously have got an awful lot of money to spend on not employing people in customer services, so it's very important to get their websites right. And I must admit, as somebody who has had to deal with a few utility companies just lately, some are very good. You soon find out the ones which aren't, so to speak. So I think benchmarking is very, very important, and the breadth of that benchmarking into the commercial sector is important. Let them spend the money on the research and get it right, and let us pinch the ideas. The other thing is, I've been looking on our site, especially at how we're using AI and the chat bot. I think calling it a chat bot is a sort of anybody over a certain age would go, I'm certainly not using that. And I did put 3 sets of words, 3 phrases in, which come to me quite a lot as a counsellor, and none of them get traction. So it's making sure that the chatbot actually is able to link and pick up all the words. I mean, those 3 which I put in are freedom of information request, didn't come up on the chatbot. Request for double yellow lines, it was, have you got a parking issue? I presume there must be a carry there, but I'm not sure. And a request for a send school placement, which is pertinent. And again, send in any form wasn't recognised as an entity, and that's a big thing which comes in the inboxes. So I think some work needs to be done there on the breadth of potential inputs, and also broadening the reach of that. I know some utility companies now use WhatsApp as a service, which is pretty, I think most people who use a computer have got WhatsApp now, and that includes a sort of, we will get back to you with the information if we can't do it straight away. And where I've had to use that, I used it initially as a sigh, but it actually works quite well. and you do get a resolution, and you do get somebody who actually, if needs be, phones you back. And, you know, I think that is interesting. But I think the other thing which is very important at all is don't leave behind those who aren't on the internet, which is a common theme which has been said by the councils across there. And I think that becomes important, that we're still supporting the local hubs, whether they, you know, whether the district council or parish town councils or whatever, and we're also supporting the information available at the libraries, because I think people who haven't got the internet will go to those places. I was actually quite shocked, and I will mention Biddulph. I went into Biddulph Town Hall just to speak to the receptionist, because she looks after part of my diary, and there was a queue of 8 people. And I was shocked how many people think they're having to queue to actually see that receptionist to find out some information. So that is important. It's also important to understand why perhaps they think they have to queue and they can't do something else elsewhere. Perhaps a computerised information portal at all these places, which some do, some don't have them.
Thank you so much, Councillor Yates. I think there are 3 things in there. What I will say is I've used WhatsApp when my hairdryer broke with Dyson. I found it to be an amazing process too, actually, to engage with an organisation, so I completely agree. I'm sure our issues were different, but it fixed my hairdryer. It was wonderful. The first...
Councillor Cox has had the same experience.
I wouldn't like to assume. But the first question you asked was around benchmarking, and I completely agree. We are partnering with the Institute for Customer Services, and their benchmarking is exceptional, and it does cover both big public service sectors like utility companies, National Rail, Highways England, big public services, as well as provides us with the ability to benchmark against other local councils, some similar services like GP practices, although I find it a little less comparable with those markets, as well as private sector. And although we don't want to compare our results necessarily with the private sector, there's a lot we can learn from how they do things and the small changes that perhaps we could adopt and implement quite easily that would improve the way that people did business with us. The second thing I want to draw your attention to, which I think is important to what you were discussing, is in our the slide that I'm sharing on screen under measuring our success, what you'll see is we're looking at the results, those crime scene results, under different contact channels. And what you'll notice is via in person and on telephone, we're already outperforming the benchmark of a score of 75. And I think that aligns with what you're describing around people really do value that in-person touch and that in-person interaction. It's a really important part of the service that we deliver. But there is demand for digital for some customers, and it's not always age-related or skill-related. COVID changed the way we do things for many people. But what we are seeing is those non-in-person, very much like our chatbot or on our website, we're not quite hitting that same standard of service that we get in person. And every customer, I believe, and the strategy says, every customer deserves that same level of service, regardless of the channel type that they've used. They should still get the same response. You should be able to put in freedom of information requests and get the results that you need. Hopefully I've addressed every point there around the benchmarking, the contact types and the customer types. Is there anything that I missed?
Slightly missed the fact, don't leave people behind who haven't got the internet, you know, the importance of those hubs. But I'll just pick up on one thing. Perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea, because I think in some respects you are sitting and looking at and thinking of and trying to second guess what people's requests are going to be to make sure that, you know, the AI part, the chat box, pick that up and then send you to the right place. Perhaps it might not be a bad idea to actually send a survey out to the councillors and ask for a list of typical questions. because there is definitely a list of typical questions which we get. Most typical ones are potholes, but there are a definite list of typical questions, and it might be a case of, you know, seeing if you can categorise them and picking up keywords to see and focuses on the chatbot to close those up, because sometimes they come to councillors first, sometimes they come to councillors out of frustration of not being able to get that impact, and that might actually close the circle on some of the phrases which are missing, because I've only picked up those 3, but I think those 3 which I picked up certainly would resonate with most people around this room as requests which come through to councillors directly. So that might be a route through.
Could I just respond? That's a very good idea, and we'll do that, because it is important that the most frequent questions are the ones that the chatbot responds to best. Although I would caveat that by saying that the acronyms that we use in local government setting would make life for a chatbot, I'm animating the chatbot, aren't I? It would make life for a chatbot extremely difficult, because we know that SEND means special educational needs, but it also means you're sending a letter. So it's a verb and an acronym, so it could be extremely difficult to deal with some of that. The chatbot for my bank drives me up the blooming wall. So it's not just us that find that challenging, but the suggestion of asking councillors what their most frequent questions are is a really good one, and we'll do that.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for the report and delivering it. I find it really encouraging. I do think maybe, as has already been said, many organisations are wrestling with this, putting the customer right in the middle, and it should be relatively easy, shouldn't it? But it always seems to be quite difficult. I have to say the report itself isn't short on modern contemporary thinking, and the phrases and the use of models, of course, and as someone preaching to the converted who thinks that the way forward is the use of peer-reviewed models in some of these things. I was just surprised, though, to see that whilst we have the use of models in how we design the strategy, and many of our partners and organisations now use models such as the national decision-making model around how you deal with customers once they phone up, because you talked a lot about consistency and making sure we get it right at the first time. And also following on from what Councillor Yates was saying there about if we can anticipate and know what some of the intelligence is around some of the questioning, then the model itself benefits from some of that. Just on that as well is I didn't see anything in the report that talks about, I mean, ironically, we've got another 2 or 3 reports that follow this morning that give us some real clues about how we improve customer service, not in a very uncomplicated way. I think it would have been useful to see something in the report that at least recognises that there are some areas of knowledge and intelligence that we can improve that process as we go through. Very often, though, I do think that there is a danger, isn't there, of overcomplicating this. The majority of people that complain to me, it's either when they can't get through, when they get through, they're passed around from one person to another, no one actually resolves the issue. And I just think if we could have a commitment to some of those things rather than, and I do understand the importance of, you talked about creativity and innovation, whilst that is important internally in an organisation, the people who complain or make a complaint, they're unaware of how creative or innovative the solution might be. And for instance, on page 32, the customer promise, we talk about respect as usual, removing barriers, communicate clearly. I just wonder whether we need a promise that says we're going to try and resolve the issue, and we're going to try and resolve it in a timely way. I think that would be perhaps a better promise. But other than that, I do welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spencer. That last point is so glaringly obvious that I'm surprised we've missed it. So I think it is a really important point that we should be including as part of that experience promise. Sometimes you are going to find a situation where somebody phones up and it can't be the person who picks up the phone initially. It might not be the next person. I think the undertaking should be that we would minimise the number of steps taken to get to the right person, rather than saying you wouldn't get passed around. I'm afraid to say, particularly when you're dealing with professional services like children's social workers and what have you, I think we need to be absolutely certain that the person who's qualified to answer the questions is the person who's dealing with it. But the number of steps to get there should be reduced. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Spencer. I appreciate the feedback around the customer promise. I think I can make a clearer line in that. In our measurements, I've been very clear to pick out a couple of specific KPIs, specifically around getting it right first time, a customer effort score, so that I can start to really monitor that through the organisation. But I think it would further enhance that promise to make a clear link between those KPIs and making it really explicit. So I think that's very fair.
Thank you. Councillor Heath?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think Councillor Spencer's sort of said in much better detail than I can, but my question quite basically was, on page 34, the getting it right first time score, the aim doesn't seem to be very ambitious. And my question really was, the 50 staff that you say that deal in this department, do they all have their individual, their individual expertise? Or if you're on duty, you pick the phone up and you answer every query or pass them on? Or do they have the specialities where they'll say, I'll give it to the colleague on the next desk and she can know your question better?
Thank you. In regard to the right first time score, you're correct. In the first 3 years, it isn't as ambitious as some of our others. That's because our baseline was quite low this year. And looking at the benchmarking across other public services, because we are so large of an organisation, we are so complex. And as we were just talking about, there are many inquiry types or reasons for contact that require different teams to be involved. It can sometimes be very difficult to raise that score more highly. That would be something I would intend to review in the hope that we achieve that and then be ambitious again to improve it even more in the coming years. But I recognise that, but I wanted to make sure that the measures we put in place were achievable. Does that help to explain? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry?
Thank you. Mine's more of an observation, but I will ask a question, I'm sure, when we go along with this. Thank you very much indeed for the presentation and the actual document itself. It looks very promising, but the strategy is only as good as the results that it brings back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it's completely rolled out over, because there's a time frame for this to go out. It'll be interesting to see what transpires in sort of 18 months' time, 2 years' time, whenever it is, to see whether it does make any difference to the customer's perception of our organisation. We can only help but try, and you're trying to do that within this document. So I'm sure we all welcome that, because as councillors, we get all sorts of telephone calls, and sometimes they're not always about our authority. There are other organisations that are alongside that we can't answer that question because we need to find out from elsewhere. So it's a moving programme, basically. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope it comes back, and we do see a difference, because as I've just said, a strategy is only as good as the results that it puts out there at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? No. Do you mind if I ask a couple? Okay. That's what I tell my husband. Okay. On page 32, you say we will spend money wisely. Do we have a budget for that, as in the training, recruitment and software?
Thank you. In two parts. So one, I do have a small budget that's part of my already my existing customer service budget for training and investment in the skills part. The second part around we will spend money wisely is really about the strategies hopes to encourage service areas when they're budgeting, they're making decisions, they're changing services, that they consider the customer experience alongside their financial implications. So I don't intend to go out and source and find additional money to create this golden experience. Instead, it's about helping services to spend their money wisely and balance the financial the requirements alongside the customer's overall experience.
Thank you. Also, I always have customers coming to me and say that they have an issue with the highways out of hours number, purely for the reason that when they first make that call, it says Staffordshire County Council is now closed, so then they don't think that they can go any further. So I don't know if that's something you could look at as well. And
I can absolutely take that away, yes. Thank you.
I do have one more, I do apologise. I know we're here for the customers and we want to make it right for the customers, but I also understand, and I know from our experience, we receive a lot of abuse at times. And I just wonder if there's anything in place for staff welfare should they receive that type of abuse.
Thank you. A couple of ways I would respond to that. So first of all, in our membership with the Institute for Customer Services, we're about to, this is quite topical, we're about to celebrate National Customer Services Week in 4 weeks. And the theme on one of those days is service with respect. So we're about to roll out a lot of activity internally, specifically about how we create a service that is both respectful for the customer, that they have a good that we create a good reputation with the customer, but also how we handle difficult, challenging, how we set standards of service for how we will be treated too. So I will make sure that that's shared widely and you can see some of those. I don't want to spoiler too many of them, but we're planning some activities specifically around that.
That's great. Ooh, excuse me, I'm losing my voice today. Thank you, that's appreciated. Do we have any further questions? I know I've just asked again. No? Okay, I think that's the end. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chair, will you just excuse me now?
You have to leave. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Yates. Thank you. Welcome, Kate. I believe we're on item number 5. Councillor White, that's over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is our annual presentation to this committee about the corporate annual report and the customer feedback complaint service for 23-24 and looking for any opportunities or any comments that you might have. You'll notice as you go through the report the number of complaints we've had has increased, and you'll notice the source of many of those complaints are the members of Parliament. It is not surprising on the run-up to an election that members of Parliament become much, much more active and making themselves known by saying to constituents, well, don't worry about it, I'll complain on your behalf. The ideal for this, of course, would be to cut out the person in the middle and encourage the resident to come straight to the council to try and get a resolution. But for reasons that I think everybody who's an elected member around the table will understand, they feel the benefit of representing their constituents. I think when we think to the future, I'm not anticipating next year's report by any stretch of the imagination, we will just see more and more of this. I think we're seeing members of Parliament becoming much more locally orientated. And I would say this on record, because I know we're being recorded. I would encourage members of Parliament to say to their constituents, get in touch with your local councillor. This can be resolved pretty quickly at a low level. And the idea that you can bypass the system by doing a complaint through an MP is something that, you know, I suppose is a seductive notion for a Member of Parliament, but actually it doesn't particularly help the system to deal with the complaints in an expedient fashion. To the detail of the report, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Bullivant, who I have to say is absolutely brilliant and keeps me and I suppose Mr. Tradewell mostly out of trouble. Deals with a lot of difficult issues that many people don't get to see. There are some particularly difficult cases that we have to deal with. I say we, it's the royal we, it's actually Mrs. Bullivant who deals with them. And we are able to resolve many of them in a timely fashion and in a very professional fashion, despite the fact that some of the complainants get particularly unprofessional and aerated in the process of presenting their complaints, sometimes in an ill-advised fashion. So with that, Madam Chairman, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Bullivant, who will take you through the details of the report.
Good morning, all. I'm here today to present 3 annual reports. This is the first. The other 2 are statutory annual reports that usually go to safeguarding overview. But today we're bringing them all together. Unfortunately, we can't put everything in one report because of our regulatory body. So for children and families, that would be Ofsted, and for adults, that would be CQC. So I am sorry, I've got 3 annual reports to present today. This annual report is the corporate annual report that picks up the majority of issues that are not statutory, i.e. children and families social care and adult social care. So this report looks at everything else from that people come into the council to complain about or have concerns about or can't find any other way to contact the council. Hence, me working very closely with Mrs. Dorbar on the customer service strategy. So as you will see, this is a process that is very much based on do it once, do it right. So it's a stage 1 if it comes in and meets threshold, and then people have the opportunity to request a stage 2 if they can provide additional information that hasn't already been addressed. So as you will see, the data that's coming in on page 65, we've had an 8.5% increase in formal complaints. That was 140 to 152. If you think about the actual size of the local authority and the amount of services we provide, you know, that's a very good number of complaints coming in. We have a number of people that want to request a service. So that could be from I want a pothole filling, I need my hedge cutting. All those are online, and I was interested in the discussion about online. So we have to refer people to the online service, and that's gone up by 24.4%, up to 351 requests. Dealt with by the team. This is the complaints team dealing with issues that come in that can't go into the complaints procedure, that aren't within another reporting mechanism. So that can be from, we've had traffic lights at a certain place for the last 3 weeks and no work's been done. Or it could be, I've made a report but I've got nothing back. So therefore we would get involved to have a word with Highways to say, you know, can you make us aware of what's happening here? So that's gone up by 14.5%. Signposts to other councils. We are a council that are surrounded by other borders. So that went up by 7% to 168. Now, MP inquiries went up 23.6%, up to 1,021 for the year. And then we deal with public enquiries to our CEO, and that's gone up to 17. That's gone up to 79, which is an 11.2% rise. We try to deal with the issues that come in. A lot of people feel they're making a complaint, i.e. you've got a pothole, but we have to go back and respectfully tell them it's a request for service. We are really grateful for people highlighting concerns about our roads, our highways, and the decision has been made that we report that digitally. So that's the way forward that we move on to. As you can see, the report actually talks about the various directorates within the council, economy, infrastructure and skills, and a breakdown of the investigation outcomes. We've got lots of learning actions. It's very important that we learn from the complaints that come in. So, for example, you'll see disabled persons parking bays. It raised concerns there. How we review our expertise on highway drainage issues. So we ensure that these are followed through via an action plan. Corporate operations, as you will see, there's a complaint there about the complaints team, pensions, legal, blue badges. So we ensure that we learn from what's coming in. We may not uphold the complaint, but of course there's learning from everything that comes into us. The final stage of the corporate complaints procedure is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. We work with the Ombudsman through all our processes, and the Ombudsman produces an annual letter. And you will see we've been brought to task for not remedying recommendations in a timely manner. This is mainly with our SEND team and children and families. So we're working with them to ensure that we provide a timely response in respect of recommendations. This is where the Ombudsman has investigated and brought the council to task in respect of how we have dealt with their, not their complaint, but the issue within that complaint. So we are working with SEND. As a complaints team, we're looking at how we work with them, what can we take from them to actually ensure that these are implemented in a timely manner. The Ombudsman is also bringing out a complaint handling code, and within this code it will be elected members that will be responsible for the effective scrutiny of complaint systems. I'm just making you aware because it's my understanding that this will come to this committee on a quarterly basis, so you can actually look at complaints that are coming in, the reason why perhaps we've said no to complaints, and understand where the issues are when things go wrong. I'm just bringing it now so that you're aware of it. It won't start till April 2025. But we are in a pilot code session at the moment. So it's just putting it on your radar as such. Okay. Any questions?
Councillor Francis.
Morning, Kate. Good report as normal. Yeah, I've lost it now. I've been lost it. I've been scheming through this. Give me a minute. Poor old soul, aren't I? Yeah, on the page 65, MP inquiry 23.6. That's has that gone up significantly? As Alan's alluded to earlier about MPs, you know, coming to, they should come refer it to us so we can instigate an inquiry or try and sort a problem out. Do they come directly to you, the MPs?
About 4 years ago, we initiated a system where all MP inquiries come to us, unless it's political, and then it goes to Councillor White, in order that we could ensure that they were responded to. MPs were going everywhere, so therefore there was concerns not only that they weren't being answered to, but of course the actual quality of the response going back. And at that point, 4 years ago, we started off with 84.
Oh, right.
So within those 4 years, obviously, they have escalated quite a lot. We do push back to say, if issues come in, you need to report this, or you need to support your resident to support this. We do have quite a few requests that are perhaps off the wall. So can you tell, you know, which are more of a freedom of information request? So yes, they are escalating. Quite a few of the MPs we know via the complaints process as well. Obviously, people going back, we respond to complaints, we do an evidence-based response, and perhaps they're unhappy with that response, so then escalate to their MP.
Can I just come back quickly, Madam Chairman? Yeah, I appreciate that, Kate, but the problem is when an MP comes directly to this council and bypasses the councillor, who can probably sort it out much quicker and better, it creates quite a significant time lag between that coming in and getting it sorted. And then the council, we as a council, as a body, get pilloried for it, but they haven't gone through the right process. So it's very important that they go through the right process. I mean, you've just done a serious complaint for me in the last few months and done a fantastic job on it. But, you know, I mean, when they write to MPs, as a certain person did, and got no response, then that creates an even bigger difficulty, because the MP didn't reply, and it just wound them up more and more and more. So it's a serious issue. Thank you.
In order to try and help the MPs' offices understand the procedures available, we did a number of years ago ask all the caseworkers to come into the county council to see how the system works and educate them about the various routes into getting problems solved. We cannot stop a member of parliament who decides that they're going to have a pothole blitz. Report your pothole to me and I'll sort it out for you. You're actually just inserting yourself into a process that's well known and well used, and you're causing delay. I would encourage the constituency offices to make sure that they're encouraging their residents who are coming to them in the first instance, rather than going to their local councillor or indeed going to the website. You know, just use the systems that are available. That's all I would suggest.
I was just thinking about that. You know, I mean, should we get all the local MPs for Staffordshire in this chamber and tell them how things work? Because they haven't got a clue on it, and we've got a load of newbies at the minute.
I meet with the MPs every 2 months, all the MPs of Staffordshire. They're very busy people. The idea that we could get them all in the same place at the same time, I don't think is realistic.
We'll
but
have to go to Westminster, won't we?
But yes, we do continue to encourage through the meetings that the MPs, in fact, during COVID, it was every month. So, yeah. Do they come?
Thank you.
To the meet? Yes. The attendance varies according to commitments in Westminster, but I think John Tradewell would like to interject.
Yeah, the other thing that we could take on board, I think the point about the MPs, getting the MPs is just not going to happen, but their support staff, it might be a possibility to get them in a room, and that's something we can have a think about, because I think a lot of the letters do come from them, so that's something we'll pick up with Kate.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the report. Just a couple of things. I think it is worth noting, it was a point you made right at the beginning, that for an organisation this size and the complexity of all the services that it delivers, the numbers of complaints are very low, and I think that we should recognise that. Also, when you read through the report, and I'm not convinced sometimes that some of the complaints really are our problem, they relate to other agencies, but some of those other agencies are unable to take those complaints, and so we're just an easy receptacle, if you like, for them. And the third point is that, as I understand it, some people's ambition is to get to the Ombudsman. And so whatever we decide to do, we're just becoming an obstacle to their path to the Ombudsman. So I think given those barriers and the fact that we have such a diverse delivery of service, I think we should keep in mind the low level of complaints that we get. Having said that, when we look at some of the complaints in particular, I think there is that opportunity for what's referred to as that Pareto type understanding, isn't it, where 80% of the problem is caused by 20% of the cause. And you looked through, and there were things like the top four were lighting, waste, transport and highways. And whilst we're probably always going to be having complaints about highways, I just wonder whether the learning from this report gives us an opportunity to perhaps address at least some of those others, like lighting, like waste. I don't know what people are complaining around waste, and perhaps to a lesser degree transport. But if we were to tackle even a small percentage of some of those, that would have a significant impact on the overall complaints that we have. And just on that use of data, because I do think this is important, I know throughout this report and others, sometimes we come up with figures of complaints that are upheld or at least partly upheld as sort of 70% or even higher. That does then just send a slightly worrying message to me about whether we're getting the service completely right if with such a high proportion of that. And also finally, and I know I'm going to sound like a scratch record, but how well are we using this data? We should be able to pick up on trends quite quickly. And I think very often when it comes to complaints, if you can resolve them quick enough, and actually if we don't do it until we have a report each year that tells us what those problems were, then I think we are sophisticated enough, or there are systems out there that could give us that early warning. And on that note, and I'm incredibly grateful to the leader because I've raised this with him before, and I was recently involved and included in a debate where, as an organisation, we are moving forward to better understand that particular data, and I do think that will make a huge difference as we move forward. So thank you again for that.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. We do quarterly reporting to the service areas so they can see trends and themes coming in. And of course, that's something Overview and Scrutiny will see from next year. Waste has recently come back into the council, so that's why we're seeing a peak as such. And we do work closely with our commissioners, our commission services. So for example, E.ON in respect of lighting. So we do try to ensure that we provide resolution and raise concerns with the commissioned areas. So for example, the new lights that are going out are very, very bright, even though they're low energy saving. So therefore, how can we ensure that residents don't have that light shining into their bedroom windows, for example? So we've come up with an idea of a cowl, so it shines down, not across. So we do that sort of work to ensure that our residents, or our customer, I should say, is actually getting some sort of resolution, even though we haven't dealt with the complaint. We've supported E.ON to do that.
Thank you, Kate. Do we have any further questions? No? That was a great report. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We now move to agenda item number 6. Councillor Mark Sutton, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good, yeah, it's still the morning everyone. Yes, so as Kate explained, the children and families complaints now come to your scrutiny committee. And Kate has done a brief sort of introduction to them. But if you can just bear with me, and I'll give a little bit of an explanation around this report before I bring Kate in. So complaints that come around the children and families come into 2 different categories, and they're dealt with in separate ways. So complaints are either statutory ones under the Children's Act, and then they are dealt with in 3 stages: by a local resolution, then an independent investigation, and then a review panel. Ones that don't fall within that statutory framework go through the normal corporate complaints procedure, and then they are dealt with in local resolution and an internal review. And in both cases, the next line is potentially the local is potentially the Ombudsman. I think what's important to state here is that in both of those types of complaints, the first stage is that local resolution that gives the team manager around who the complaint is made about 20 days to look into it and try and resolve that matter before it goes any further. And I think that is really an important factor because then teams, the service, are understanding what complaints are being made and what issues there are straight away, so they can not only look at that complaint, but they can use that to try and go forward to address that, particularly if it becomes a little bit of a theme. I think what's also important to mention is on the actual report, about 3 or 4 pages in, it details the volume of work that social workers and the SEND teams are actually dealing with, and I think that puts things in a little bit of context. You know, there's over 7,000 statutory assessments completed within this time period, and you know, over 1,000 new educational health and care plans were issued. And overall, a total of 506 complaints were investigated. And I don't think we should miss out on the fact that there was also 278 compliments. So in effect, for about every 2 complaints we investigated, there was actually a compliment. And complaints in this area predominantly from parents of children that we are working with. So that adds another dimension, I think, that can't go without comment. Just going back a little bit to learning from this. There's a quarterly report done for the service, so we don't have to wait a year to fully understand what the themes and the trends are. You know, that's done on a quarterly basis, as well as that fact that the team manager will know of every complaint. A team manager will know of every complaint coming in anyway. So I think I'll leave it there, and I'll let Kate detail anything else that she feels appropriate, and then obviously we're willing to take questions.
I don't think there's much more. Councillor Sutton's done a fantastic job. Thank you. I think it's important to say that our working relationship with children and families has to be top-notch to get through these. Children and Family Service provide a service that can come over as very emotional, and therefore we're all dealing with families that need support within their daily life. When a stage 1 comes in, we assess it to see whether or not it can come into the complaints procedure, or is it something that we can resolve really quickly. So, for example, I was expecting a phone call from my social worker and that hasn't happened, so we wouldn't put that in the process. We would get and have a conversation with the team manager or the social worker to say, would you please call this person back? It's when we are in a situation where the service have allegedly not provided what they should have provided. And therefore, we look at it. Is it something we can investigate? If it's in court proceedings, we can't. If it's someone that hasn't got significant interest in the case, that's something else that we can't do. Is it a safeguarding matter? So we look at it, we define the complaint so that the response going back is actually addressing the concerns raised. We could have, we could have a 3 or 4 page letter or a very lengthy email. So therefore it's important that the team manager, the district lead or the deputy district lead knows what they're investigating. The investigation report comes back, we then QA it to make sure it goes out and it answers every concern raised, because the next stage is an independent investigation at stage 2, which can take up to 65 working days to do. It lengthens the whole process. We've still got a family in the middle of things, being very upset about the situation they're in. We have to get an independent investigating officer and an independent person who acts on behalf of the young person that's in the middle of this. So what we try to do is QA the stage 1. When we have a stage 2 request, we work with the service area, usually the district lead, to meet with parent or mom, whoever's making the complaint, to say, well, what's wrong? What could we have done? What are you unhappy with in respect to the complaint? And the reason we do that is obviously to try and get resolution after the 20 days and not put them within another 2 months of getting any outcome. But also, for me, I will be paying at least £4,000 for that independent investigation. So therefore, I need it to be timely, I need it to put the complainant at the centre of things, and also to ensure that we're not paying out a vast sum of money for something that we could have resolved earlier. I can't say no to a stage 2 because the regulations say we can't say no to a stage 2, even if everything's been upheld. So we have to work with the complainant, work with the service area. And then once the stage 2 has been done, there will be recommendations coming from that, and then that goes up another stage to Bernie in respect of, right, we've got this, Nisha, Bernie, we've got this. What are we going to learn from it? What are we going to do with it? Then there's stage 3, which is an independent panel of 3 people, who then would review the complaint with the IO, the IP, the district lead, the social worker, the adjudicating officer. And again, that's another 30 days. So we try to ensure that things are done at stage 1. And then off to the Ombudsman. We appreciate that, these are very emotional times for parents. So therefore, everything has to be evidence-based. We have to have an evidence base to hold this on, and that comes via the Children Act. Now, the corporate stage ones, these are our send complaints. The majority are our send complaints. And as you can see, they have risen again this year, 57% to 316. They've steadily rose year on year since 21-22. There was 85 in 21-22, and they've steadily risen over the past couple of years. If we're honest, a high number are upheld, but we haven't got the provision in place to actually provide the specialist education that children need, or the timeliness of updating or reviewing an EHCP. So therefore, when it goes to the Ombudsman can see we've done all we can, but we're still found at fault because we can't provide. This isn't just a Staffordshire County Council issue, this is a national issue. But it is something that as a scrutiny committee you need to be aware of. So once they go to the Ombudsman the Ombudsman investigate and find us at fault. Not all the time, I hasten to add. They do an initial inquiry to see whether or not we've done our job in the complaints team, and then they investigate if they don't think we have. Or we've upheld everything, but we haven't been able to provide resolution. Compliments are a big thing in the children and families world, and we need to celebrate that success. So this year they're up to 278. They're unsolicited compliments. We don't go out and say, what do you think of our service? It's unsolicited compliments, someone taking the time to actually say, I've had a fantastic experience. And some of them are quite emotional to read. So that therefore, that positive feedback is really, really good. It's a very in-depth report. Since we moved to the district way of working for children and families, all the services are within the district. So therefore, hence us bringing the corporate and the stat together so you see the overview of it all. Obviously, happy to take any questions.
Councillor Francis.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kate, and thanks for alluding to what went on. As we know, the last few months we've had to deal with something very serious, and I think the council's acted in a fantastic way, in a timely manner, to be quite frank. What happens when the complaint goes straight to Lado? If it goes to Lado, does the Lado bring it back to us? That's number one. Number two is, on the recommendations and learning from stage 2, Children's Disability Service, I recommend that the local authority now considers ensuring the family have reasonable notice of all respite provision and avoid the family being told on the day that respite is available. Are all these recommendations, have they all been taken up, and are they instigated?
So in respect of recommendations, recommendations are done on an action plan. They're reviewed on a monthly basis. Where are we with these, to ensure that the complainant gets what has been recommended that they need. And also, if we get recommendations from the Ombudsman, we have to update the Ombudsman too. So in respect of... in relation to a complaint going to Lado, that would be a safeguarding referral. So Lado would look at it under their own policy and procedures. Then, should the customer being unhappy with that, could come back to us to make a complaint about it. But we would look at it in the round to see what had been done before we'd look at it and perhaps put it in the process.
Councillor Spencer.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the report. Really useful. I won't go over the points I've made previously. Other than just the use of some of the data, because the report itself seems to make it clear that 80% of the complaints are upheld, so it would tend to suggest that there is an issue. By far the majority are made by parents, by far the majority are about administration and case management. I noticed on this occasion, and I don't recall it from previous reports, we've even now been told of some of the areas. I think it's Cannock, Staff, Lichfield and Stafford. If we have all of that intelligence now at hand, can we be reassured that at least this process highlights areas where we could make a significant improvement in changing the way that some of these complaints are dealt with?
So if I can start, I think that you make some good points there, and I think one of the advantages of the district model is that it is easier now to identify and look for a particular lead who can address issues that are solely or predominantly within that district, as opposed to the whole thing being lost in the whole, in the whole of the authority. Now, discussing what goes on and in individual districts and looking for ideas and trends and raising issues that they've got is something that goes on amongst the district leads and the officer that leads on that, and that is done on a regular basis. And that quarterly report that I spoke about as well is something else that is addressed. But I don't think you can lose factors, and I think you said this, Bob, that a lot of these are administrative. A lot of these are about keeping in contact with contact people. They are about improving that daily sort of supervision and getting the ethos of how we respond to how we respond to the families that we are dealing with, because on the basis of it, you have to remember that I think it was pointed out by the leader, is that a lot of these complaints come from people that don't want to be our customers, and I think that has to be taken into account when we think about how we deal with things. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we absolutely need to learn from how we respond to people, how we deal with things. And I'm quite happy that is being done.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to perhaps elaborate on what Councillor Spencer's just said there, because obviously I've picked up, and from the district within, Lichfield, we seem to have high numbers of complaints. So what are we doing, in a sense, about that to reduce it in terms of partnership or whatever it is? Because it's quite a high number, and I know we're a growing district, and I see Stafford's as well is high, and that might be also a problem. But it's the outcome to reduce these number of complaints, which I feel is vastly more important.
Thank you. This report is first year post-transformation. So children's went through transformation the previous year, and therefore I am aware that work is ongoing to review what has happened at this time, to see what we've done right, what we've got wrong, what we're going to do about it. Like I say, we do have the quarterly report and we raise issues that we've got. We have seen a turnover of staff. We have seen increasing numbers coming in. So therefore, if I'm right in thinking, Councillor Sutton, work is ongoing to address those concerns. Bernie, the new Children and Families Director, is looking at strategy across on how those are going to be addressed. So yes, I do agree. And I think it's good to highlight, because you're all being able to see that increase. And hopefully next year, or the first quarter where you'll be looking at complaints, you will see what's been done and hopefully a reduction in that.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Councillor Spencer?
So I think just some clarification around that last point. Rather than be critical of those areas, I do wonder whether we have an opportunity to try to identify best practice in perhaps what are the other areas, rather than holding some of these areas to account. I'm sure they have all the legitimate reasons why they're stretched and pushed at certain times. But I do wonder whether there is some opportunities in some of the other areas that would appear to be performing better. And actually, as an organisation, we learn from that rather than put the the prism of scrutiny over the 4 or 5 areas that at this present moment in time don't seem to be. Thank you.
So if I can just pick up on that quite briefly. I mean, just to pick up on the last point that Councillor Cox made, you know, and I presume that's the he was referring to the corporate complaints around the Lichfield. You know, if you look at the ones through the statutory children's service, and particularly the duty by service, and look at Lichfield, then there's probably a slightly different picture to what he picks up on. But going back to what Councillor Spencer just mentioned. Next door in the room next door is the monthly Children's Improvement Board, the operational board. And part of that process is about each of the district leads bringing to that issues that they have, concerns they have, so they can discuss that with colleagues along with the DCS and the ADs and others. As well as issues, it's also an element there of good practice and learning, and that's primarily done in order that we can ensure that our Ofsted rating going forward improves. But there's also a knock-on effect of that in improving that daily process. And if you do that, then by default, you know, the percentage of complaints you get for the amount of children that we are dealing with, you know, should I hope stabilise, and we learn from it.
Councillor Spencer.
Well, I just think that's hugely encouraging to hear that from the figures that we see. Offline, somebody. I do think it's useful to see that we've spotted those opportunities and actually grasped the chance of putting that right. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mark. Thank you both. We now move to item number 7. Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the Adult Social Care Annual Report for Customer Feedback and Complaints. Rather than go through the report in detail, one of the things I do want to just highlight, and this is not in any way, shape or form to denigrate the complaints that come in. It is just to draw your attention on page 122 to just see how much the service actually does on an annual basis. Brokerage service arranging 10,430 new packages and placement. Finance team completing nearly 3,000 financial assessments and 4,500 reassessments. Sorry, 7,500. Thank you. First contact team undertaking 7,719 assessments, of which 4,742 were completed at first contact, and then ALD carrying out 358 new assessments and 1,574 reviews. The purpose of highlighting those numbers is that this is a department that works very, very hard and does a lot of assessments each year. You'd only need to add all those up and divide by 52 to get a sense of how many per week that they're actually doing. So I would just like to draw your attention to that before I hand over to Mrs. Bullivant just to take you through any further details contained within the report. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor White. This complaints report is the statutory complaints report for adult social care. Adult social care complaints are dealt with via the 2009 Health and Social Care Regs. And what that means is that if we have a customer that goes into hospital as an issue in hospital, issue on discharge, and then we brokerage a package of care, there should be one response. We should be working together with our health colleagues, which we do quite well. This report also covers MPFT. MPFT deliver the older people's and physical disability services on behalf of the County Council under a Section 75 agreement. The Council deliver adult learning disability services. So it gets a bit confusing a bit down the line, especially if we've got a bit of transition going on. But all in all, we have a very positive working relationship with our adult social care team, from the front door, from first contact, Staffordshire Cares, and then going out to the teams, whether that be finance, whether that be adult learning disability, or our colleagues in MPFT. We also support our commission services, we also support our commission services in respect of domiciliary care, so people going into citizens or service users or customers' homes, and residential care, because if we've placed or if we've brokeraged that package of care, it's up to the council remain responsible. So we would support the frontline service, i.e. the residential care home, or the domiciliary care agency to respond to complaints, to put it right. So it gets, we're responsible throughout, if I'm honest. So we have a statutory complaints procedure which is badged do it once, do it right by the government. So therefore we do the complaint once, so therefore it has to be fit for purpose. We have to QA it. And again, people can come back to us. As a local authority, we say, if you're not happy, please come back to us and we'll look at it again. We don't have to say that. That isn't part of the regs, but that is something we want to do. The regulations also don't have any timescales, but in order to give us some teeth, the County Council do 10 to 20 working days. We think that's reasonable for a response. So again, when the complaint comes in, it is screened to see, is it really a complaint? Do we need to get, is it a safeguarding issue? Do we need to get consent from the person the complaint is being made on behalf of before we can move it forward? It would then, once it's been screened and agreed, it would go out to the service area. As you can see, it's a very positive report, bearing in mind, as Councillor White very said, that the amount of services that we provide, we've had 215 formal complaints, 21% increase on the year, and the increase is really split between ALDT and also finance. I met with Councillor Pert last week about the report, and we talked about the change in financial services, on how that's moving forward in order to reduce complaints. We have, again, it's when you need us, it's very hard to be told when you're going into hospital, you're going to have to pay for this, you're going to have to do that, etc., etc., etc. So we are working together to provide practice guidance. We work with MPFT, we work with ALDT, we work with the performance team in ALDT to actually ensure that we get our message across, but it's done in a timely manner. Debt recovery, we have a lot of debt in adult services, and therefore we work with them to look at complaints before we go down the route of debt recovery. Because what's gone wrong? Is it something somebody hasn't understood? Is it the person's passed away, unfortunately? So, you know, we have to tread very carefully in respect of working with and ensuring that this process is formally put together. As you can see, 35% of complaints were upheld and 35% were partially upheld. So therefore, that's a good outcome from the council. It shows that we are doing our job correctly. Lots of learning actions. I go to a monthly meeting with ALDT. Sorry, I keep calling them ALDT, I do apologise, with adult social care, where we share our learning, best practice is shared. Obviously, that's with our MPFT colleagues as well, so that we can show what we've got, what the issues are, where they're coming in, and how we deal with them. Ultimately, we're off to the Ombudsman again. As you can see, it's very much like our other Ombudsman contacts. They make inquiries, and then they decide from that point whether or not we investigated. So out of 37 complaints which were referred to the Ombudsman, 19 were fully investigated by the Ombudsman, 4 were referred back to the local authority for investigation, and 14 complaints were closed after inquiries were made. So therefore, from my point of view, that shows that the responses are evidence-based. You know, we are responding to the concerns raised. Again, the team deal with quite a lot of inquiries coming in, things that we wouldn't put in our complaints procedure. So we've dealt with 152 complaints informally. Again, we try to get these through a process. We don't want to put people in a process to get out the other end and the outcome is still the same. Again, we've had to work with our NHS colleagues. MP inquiries, 87. Again, that's on top of the 1,000 that we also dealt with corporately. So again, a very thorough report, a report that shows that adult social care take complaints seriously. They want to resolve things quickly. And I must say, working with adult social care and the Director of Health and Care is a very positive experience. They listen, they learn, and they then move things forward.
Thank you, Kate. Councillor Francis.
Yeah, some of the things in this I've alluded to the other reports, and I think the team's doing a fantastic job. I'll refer to page 136 and his compliments. And I must admit, it shows that you're doing a good job when, in one of the bubbles, it said, it is often easier to complain, but in this instance, I would like to compliment the service. It is in the modern era that often difficult to speak to an actual person and to have a call answered in a short period. Today I received both a prompt answer to my call and exemplary service from a gentleman in adult social care. He had a calm demeanour, and through his lucid and intelligent handling of my issue, he was able to resolve all my concerns. If all call centres had such individuals and service excellence, the world would be a much better place. Well done, and thank you, Mrs B and staffs, County Council, for treating people as individuals and providing excellent service. So that's a brilliant compliment, Kate, and well done to you, and a great report.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions for Kate? Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Yeah, I think actually Councillor White set the tone quite nicely, actually, that percentages can actually charade actually the real effort that's going into it and the number of complaints. So if you look at numbers, they are significant, and yet somebody could look at percentages and get the wrong view of it and misinterpret. So I'm always keen on numbers rather than percentages, and I think those are quite clear. But that's not to say, you know, there's still areas that we could improve, and I'm sure that is the aim, because obviously it's a very important subject, and hopefully we will look at getting things, you know, a downward trend in those complaints. But I'm glad that numbers situation was highlighted, because it is important to recognise. Thank you.
I think it's just important to note as well that in respect to finance, we wouldn't want any of our customers, residents, service users in debt. You know, we wouldn't want to place them in debt, and therefore it's very important that we deal with things in a timely manner to ensure that, you know, we don't cause any more confusion, any more emotional turmoil than, you know, the situation they're already in.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'd just agree with what other people have said, and the fact that I chair the safeguarding, and we see adult safeguarding reports brought quite regularly to my committee, and I think this just evidences again that excellent job that we do in protecting adults. The point I would also make is when it comes to safeguarding adults is very different from safeguarding children, and it takes a lot more cajoling and persuasion and various other things, and we seem to have the people in place that can do that. And I would finish with page 125 at the bottom there around the recommendations. The fact that we seem to resolve things mainly with an explanation and occasionally an apology suggests to me that we're getting it pretty well right across the board. And again, I would send my thanks and congratulations to those involved.
Councillor White.
I just want to re-emphasise something that Mrs Bullivant said during the course of her presentation. It is important that we make sure that every time a complaint comes in, that we do analyse the basis of that complaint. If there is a policy or system failure that results in that complaint, then we need to attend to it. And I know with your forensic mind, Councillor Spencer, with your committee, and you see those reports coming in for the Adult Safeguarding Board, it is really important that we look for any trends, or we look for any sense of any policy or procedure failings, so that we can address them at the earliest opportunity. Because if we don't do that, then surely these things may snowball in due course, so that and we want to prevent that from happening at all costs.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? No? I think that's it. I'd just like to say thank you. I think all the reports that we've had brought forward to us this morning have been very positive, and if we keep that trend going, then I feel we will get there. So thank you. Thank you. We now move to item number 8, Overview and Scrutiny Work Programmes Quarterly Update. Now, I'm going to bring Debs in on this one because she has a little speech, don't you, Deb? So I'll leave this one with you to explain, and then we'll take questions after, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme update is before members. The report has been pulled together, shows a summary of recent scrutiny activity. It also shows planned activity for the year coming forwards. Scrutiny committees have each met to agree their priorities and their work programmes for the year. And this committee, the Corporate Committee, retains oversight of all of those work programmes. So one of the recommendations from this report is to approve the committee work programmes. I'd like to draw members' attention to paragraph 15 of the report, which shows how Scrutiny has aligned the corporate delivery plan priorities with its own work programmes. This is to ensure that Scrutiny adds maximum benefits and value to the corporate processes and the governance process. Scrutiny also looks at areas of concern in depth, and within the report we outline work programme planning and work groups and inquiry sessions which take place. Recently, the Health and Care Committee has looked at defibrillators, and a report especially on that report will go back to the main committee next time. And also the committee is looking at women's health strategy. which has a report on endometriosis and an inquiry session next week, Chair. So Scrutiny can look at the strategic objectives, the performance of this council. It can challenge the executive. It can also take matters of public concern and look at those in depth in working groups and inquiry sessions. And I think you'll agree there's quite a lot of information within this report. It's the first quarter report of everything planned. So with that, Chair, I'd just like to pass the report back to you to consider the 3 recommendations, that the committee consider the work programmes of all the other committees and approve them, to agree the combined work programme for the next quarter. The combined work programme includes all the extra activity, the work programmes and inquiry sessions, and also to note that the committees track and monitor their outcomes. So any recommendations sent forward to the Cabinet is required to respond to the appropriate committee within 2 months. And we have at one of the appendices, Appendix 3, included all of the executive responses to recent recommendations. And I think you'll also see that there's been a real success in the amount of recommendations accepted by Cabinet. So over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just add to that report that I'd like to thank all the chairs of the other committees for the county, that your work is appreciated and we thank you for it. Do we have any questions or concerns? Councillor Spencer?
I bet you knew that was coming, didn't you? My only concerns I've expressed previously is that I certainly I only speak for myself, but I think I'm speaking for the other chairs as well. It is that the workload does get increasingly greater. On Thursday, this coming Thursday, my committee has 4 quite large reports. We very rarely get through a report in under an hour, especially given that people will talk through those reports first. Potentially 4 hours. I am concerned about members' welfare. I've shared my concerns with them. And if we were to stop part way through to allow people to go and get sandwiches, for which I'm told they can claim £7.50 if they go out at lunchtime, then that's likely to make it even longer. I think there is a commitment to want to make this work. And people are committed to come along and contributing, and as you've just pointed out there, the value of scrutiny. I just wonder why we have a policy that doesn't take more understanding around the welfare of those people who will be coming to do that work. I know I'm told there's no budget for sandwiches or additional bits and pieces, but it would make sense to me if the system were a little bit more understanding around the amount of time and effort that people are going to have to put into some of these meetings to address all of this particular work. And I would just ask that through yourself that we make representation around the welfare of people. I don't think people make good decisions after 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, especially if they're not wondering where lunch is coming from or anything else. I sit on other committees and lunch is provided, so I don't see why important committees like this should be any different.
Thank you. We'll take your points on board and we'll sit and discuss and take them to the relevant parts. Thank you. Is there any further questions? No? No? Okay. Debbie, you quite happy with that? Yep. Okay. Thank you. We'll now move... Item number 9, the work programme. Have we all looked at that and are we happy with that? Mandy, is there anything you would like to say?
Your next meeting is the 29th of October. There haven't been any changes to the work programme since the last meeting.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I think lunch is on Bob then today. So, but that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.